Welcome to Living the Spiral. This is a place to slow down, take a breath, and listen to the rhythms moving through your life. Here we explore astrology, human design, the I Ching, and elemental ancestral wheels of the year from cultures around the world. These are old maps and living languages that help us sense where we are in time, what is asking to unfold, and how we belong to something far larger than any single moment. In each episode, we trace patterns in the sky and in the body. We weave myth with lived experience, intuition with practice, and the personal with the collective. Living the Spiral is about learning how to move with change instead of pushing against it. About meeting transitions with curiosity, integrating polarities, and remembering that every season carries its own powerful wisdom. When you begin to listen to the cycles, life starts to feel more connected, more meaningful, and more alive. I'm your host, Alison Dale, and this is Living the Spiral podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to Living the Spiral and to a new episode in the Magicians series. Today, my guest is Stephanie Foley, a creative alchemist with one foot in the forest and one in the stars, as she puts it. I love that phrasing. It feels so resonant to me. Stephanie calls herself a cosmic cartographer, mapping the interplay between imagination, nature, and universal cycles, a meta mapper, which is another term I absolutely love. She's just a brilliant human who guides people to align their purpose with presence and step into their full creative expression. Stephanie is also a lifelong collaborapreneur, someone who blends artistry, entrepreneurship, and co-creation as a path towards collective magic. She believes that when we tune in with nature's rhythms, life itself becomes a spell of enchantment, beauty, and balance. Her work is rooted in both science, she's a trained mathematician, and spirit, she's a shamanic practitioner, and she's really this just really fun person to talk to. I had such a blast having this conversation. Stephanie and I found each other on Substack, and this episode exists because at one point earlier in the summer, I posted something about the magical nature of sevens, how sevens kept showing up in my life, and she, without pause, sent me a document she'd made called The Spiral of Sevens, which maps sevenfold patterns across mythology, music, color, alchemy, sacred geometry, and more. And I knew immediately that I wanted to unpack it with her, so we decided to do it on air. What we didn't really plan on was how much the conversation would keep circling back to the number 8, which is a number that I am very much obsessed with. Writing a book called The Alchemy of 8, and it's tied into all of these themes. But the 7 gates are these thresholds that you go through in order to get to this 8 point, this infinity loop where the cycle completes and levels up. So 7 in this episode is about the living, moving process, and 8 is the structure that holds it all. So that's where the title for this episode comes from, 7-8 Magic, and you'll hear us elaborate on it deeply as we make our way through the conversation. You'll also definitely hear it in the excitement of our voices. Stephanie and I are both Jupiter in Sagittarius babes, and this is a true kindred spirit connection. Our Jupiters are in the same gate of power in Sagittarius, and the expansive quality of our conversation is very much felt here. You can find Stephanie at moonfeatherhollow.com, on Substack at Seasons and Stars, which is stephaniefoley.substack.com, and on YouTube at Moonfeather Hollow, and I highly recommend you give her a peek. Her world is immersive and mystical and magical and filled with brilliance. And she has a lot of offerings live right now, so check out Stephanie Foley's work. Before we dive in from my side, I have a small announcement. My ecosomatic astrology course is opening this fall. It's open for registration now, and it's starting on September 22nd, the fall equinox here in the Northern Hemisphere. It's running for 6 Tuesday evenings at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard on Zoom, but all sessions will be recorded if you can't make it live. It is a 101 astrology course, my first I've ever taught, and bringing it in through that ecosomatic lens, that rooting into the earth, rooting into our bodies. And so it'll be a course that is not just mental. It's not just memorizing a lot of points and planets and archetypes, but it's going to be a lot of embodiment practices that you can carry on with you to ground into the seasons as they pass, as well as the planets and their significations. And so I'm really excited to bring this through. A lot of what we talk about here in the episode today with Stephanie relates to the philosophy and the theory that both she and I hold about the earth moving through our bodies and the stars moving through our bodies in this way that is deep and profound. You can sign up for that course at my website at hearthandspiral.com, and the link will be in my bio and in the show notes as well. So I'd love to have you there to deepen into this material and get a basic understanding of astrology, or deepen into your understanding of astrology through a somatic and ecological perspective. And without further ado, let's get into it. This conversation really lit me up, and I hope it does the same for you. My guest here today is Stephanie Foley of Moonfeather Hollow. And when I first found her work, I felt just such an immediate recognition, such a kindred spiritedness to what I've been working on over the past several years. I'm really feeling like somebody's been living the same territory that I've been mapping from a little bit of a different angle, but there's just so many convergences. Stephanie is a creative mystic, and her business is Moonfeather Hollow, which she describes as a mythological ecosystem. It's built around lunar and seasonal rhythms, spiritual practice, and creative living. And it has this gorgeous dreamlike quality that is also really grounded in the turning of the year, which I absolutely love. Her Substack is called Seasons and Stars, and she teaches and guides and runs alchemy sessions. And she and I just connected on Substack and decided to record this episode when I posted something about the magical nature of sevens. And she sent me a 7-part document called The Spiral of Sevens, which is a whole cosmological map of sevenfold patterns across mythology, music, color, alchemy, sacred geometry, and about 40 other things that I want to spend this episode unpacking. So that's what we'll do because I've been really sitting with this number 7 for a long time in my own work. This year, it's really hit me in the chest with the 7 gates of Inanna, the 7 thresholds of the wheel of the year before the point of stillness at winter solstice, the 7 chakras, and there's so many more. So when I found Stephanie's piece mapping the 7 stages of alchemy onto the 4 seasons, something really clicked into place. So Stephanie, welcome to Living the Spiral.
Thank you, Alison. And the feeling is so mutual. When I found you, I felt relief and gratitude because you had already created some body of work that I had been wanting to create. And I felt like, oh, good, that part's done already. Because there's so much to do in this realm that we're navigating these days.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Yeah, I've loved connecting with you through Substack and just on a few video calls here and there. It's been so amazing to see the convergences that we're working with. Just really tapped into that ecosystem kind of mentality, the rootedness into the seasons and our bodies. And I love your website, how you have a quiz about which season you're in. I just took your quiz, and it was so exciting to see what you're doing. And I completely resonate that you are doing things that I've wanted to do but haven't been able to quite manifest yet. So it's really amazing to just see how it's playing out on both sides.
Well, and it's fun to see how we can have so much in common, but I bet if you were to look at our human design and our astrological charts, there's these huge differences which are visible through what we have created thus far. And yet we have the commonality of the big vision that we see. It's
Yes.
fun.
Yes, exactly. We're picking up on different fractals, different designs, different colors, right? But it is very much this larger synthesis of things that we're really drawing into. So, yeah, it's beautiful.
And it all comes back to this patterning, which more and more the spiral describes it all. And yeah, I can go into the flower of life and sacred geometry and many, many things. And I keep being called back to the simplicity, the misleading simplicity of the spiral. Like there is the simplicity of the flow and the design of the spiral, but the complexity keeps me coming back for more and more and more, recognizing that all patterns can be brought back into the spiral of
Yes.
sevens.
Spiral of sevens. There it is. There it is. When it hits you and then you start recognizing it everywhere in the world, it's like you see it one place and then another place and another place. I've always been drawn to spirals, petroglyphs, and just the geometry of spirals. But for some reason, I didn't quite click into that word or into that gnosis until fairly recently. And then once I did, the other spiral people of the world have come out of the woodwork, it feels like. And just renaming my podcast from Cycles of Time to Living the Spiral, it really was this way of transitioning from like, oh, we're not repeating anything twice. We are leveling up every time. We are bringing what we've learned in the last cycle. And so I like cycles, but leveling that to spirals just has really brought some amazing people into my sphere, including
Well,
yourself.
we're all uncoiling.
We sure are. And it is
We're
about
all
time.
unfurling.
We are just like
So I think
firm.
of a quote from a gazillion years ago in my life, the something about when you return to the place and recognize where you've been, you come back to the place where you started and recognize it for the first time or something like that. That, along with this other quote I've heard about how you have to do a thing 3 times, once to experience it, the second to acclimate to it, and the third to learn it, master it. And that this concept of the spiral being the cycle that comes back around on itself to the eighth place, to that magical infinity 8, where we keep
Mhm,
coming back to 8
mhm.
because you've gone through 7 steps and now we're at 8, and you're looking back at 1, and you're going to do another 7 steps, and then you get to look back at 1 and 8, and
Yeah.
it expands.
Yeah.
And that recognition that I know this place, I've been here before, and then the view the perspective being just slightly expanded is the most exciting feeling of being human. And I feel like, isn't that the point? I'd love to hear someone tell me any other reason to be here.
Yes, totally, totally. I know that feeling. I can feel as you were speaking about it, I could feel my heart expanding with that. Just that awareness, that recognition, of coming back to the same point. And of course, it can go both ways. You can come back to an anniversary of something and just feel the heaviness of what that anniversary represents. But even within that, even within a painful moment of that cycle, you can come back and say, oh, wow, I have grown so much. And I am seeing this from a new vantage point. And there's that heart explosion, even within something that isn't all rainbows and lollipops.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because you just like, I can feel it in my heart right now, because I have grief points in my life just like that. And there's so much gold to be found in the grief. And, they always say that time heals all wounds. And I don't really believe that. But I do think that in what you just said, that when you come back to the anniversary of a grief thing, a sad thing, a certain amount of, it's not just time, it's experience, exposure, perspective, perception, other content has flown through the cycle to where now you are experiencing a grief from a new place. And so it's an old grief, but from this new place, you can often find the gold that came in that grief.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think there is gold in all grief. The underworlds that we traverse all have riches buried underneath. And sometimes it does take that full cycle, that getting to that next level of the spiral, to see anything good within something. Sometimes it is that product of time, and also just, yeah, all of the different leaves and blossoms and dust that has flown through that time period. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can honestly say with such extreme conviction, having had grief and loss be a very close personal experience, and being 20 years past a major grief point in my life, to be able to say, I am not glad that that thing happened. I would never wish for that horrible thing to happen, but I wouldn't be who, where, and what I am today. And there were so many things that came to pass that would not have come to pass in the way that they did, that I can't help but be grateful that all is well, whether in that moment I could believe that or not.
Yes, it's true. When you're right in the heat of it, you can't ever imagine that it could have a silver lining or that gold at in the basement kind of thing. And then it does. I'm coming into a 7-year anniversary of a grief process myself, and really noticing within that 7 just the alchemy that is happening within my life at this moment of like, wow, I'm not as connected to that other person. I feel like I'm a different person looking back on that other person, and they do say that the cells in our body all regenerate every 7 years. And that's kind of a little bit of a myth because, of course, our nerve cells don't regenerate, but the majority of our cells have regenerated over the course of a 7-year process. And so almost looking at yourself as like, definitely there's a continuity of selfhood throughout all of your life and throughout lifetimes probably, but then there is these chunks, these like quarter turns of Saturn around the ecliptic that are allowing us to pause and say, okay, I'm not as intricately woven into what made me who I was then because of the learnings that have come. And so I've had that mirroring lately with this 7-year itch, or the 7-year thing that's happening. It's been pretty profound. So I'm so glad that you're here to talk to me. It was so amazing to receive that document from you that you'd put together about sevens, because I've just been on this trip of, whoa, oh my God, sevens. And
What were some of your first, I would never ask you to pick one. What are your first 3 to 5 sevens that kind of hit you? Because then beyond that, you're like, well, there it is again.
Right, exactly.
But give me a couple of your starter sevens.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, for me, the myth of Inanna was something that really came through strongly this year. I started reading a lot of books about Inanna, and I feel like I had this experience where I just was really struck by that story. When 7 years ago, when I gave birth to my daughter, I was a part of a group of mothers who brought their 2-month-old babies into the Berkeley Hills, and we gathered and had some snacks and a picnic. And then the facilitator would guide us on little mini hikes with the babies, going through different mythologies of descent, of emergence, of transformation. And Inanna was the first one that she guided us through. And I'd heard of the story before, but not too much. And hearing it in this way where I was walking with a small child and feeling like I had gone through this portal, just a couple months before, and now everything was different. And then she took us through this amazing hiking trail where we went through a bunch of different trees and physical portals, where kind of as you went under one of these, grottos or tree branches, she would talk about the different layers that you're shedding, layers of ego, layers of your old self that you shed as you walk through these gates. And so since then, Nana's story has been really profound for me personally. And then this year, I just started having wild dreams about how the descent of Inanna relates to the Wheel of the Year. And a painting came through in January where I had a vision in my dreams and was like, I need to paint that. But it was about the descent of Inanna and these 7 different gates of ego dissolution, of stripping the trappings of the world of the sky gods as you go through this descent process, but what is gained as you descend and as you're conscious of what it is that you're releasing, and how that ties into the Wheel of the Year and each of the holy days of the Wheel of the Year. So I started just putting together this framework pretty much in my sleep, and I would wake up and be like, oh, there's another layer to it. And it started to hit me that it was like also related to, it's an 8-point star. Inanna's star is an 8-point star. And so, but there's 7 gates, and I haven't seen those correlated so much, but I really was interested in how 8 and 7 are tied together, where the eighth point is that infinity symbol. It is that point of completion or integration or up-leveling to the next stage of the spiral, I guess, after going through the 7 phases of transformation. So long story short, Inanna was my 7 that captured me. And now it's been just so many things I can add on to this painting. I'm like, and that point of the star also means this, and it also means this piece. So there's 8, but for me, the 8 is like the completion of the 7 that starts it all over again.
Well, I'm with you there. In fact, my journey began with the 8, and I was really into 8 for a long, long time from childhood. 8 was always my favorite number.
Mine
my
too.
birthday's October 8th.
Okay. Mine's September
and I love
8th. Oh my gosh, how
infinity
fun.
symbol.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
didn't realize that.
Yeah.
And of course you've got that Virgo energy. That explains everything. That explains how you got all this stuff done that I just dream about with my
I love my Libras. I love my Libras. I have a Libra moon. I feel
that's
you.
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But it really was for me the Wheel of the Year. And I remember even as a little kid, it was just like being so in tune with the seasons and not fully comprehending linear time and time on a ruler. And this cycle of 8 seasons was so powerful for me, drove all of my spirituality through up until about 20 between 20 and 25 years ago, when I had a series of really tragic things happen in my life. And then I had outlived someone who was dear to me, and I decided I needed to make the most of this time. So I took a 7-dimensional medicine wheel, and that opened me up to sevens and the directions: north, south, east, west, above, below, and within. And then I started to recognize, oh, in this 8, the 7 is the spaces between the 8. Because in math, I'm a mathematician by training,
Nice.
um, that we tend to count. People always get confused when you're counting. It's inclusive. They'll say things like from 20 to 29 they'll say that's 9. But I'm like, but if you include 20, it's 10, because that's the
Right.
0. It's inclusive. So the 8 is the inclusive and the 7 is the in between. So it's exactly as you said, that the 8 is the place where it all comes together. And so I knew about the wheel of the year and the 8 seasons, or 4, but split into the solar significant days. But then I hadn't realized that the moon was operating on this same thing until like around, I don't know, maybe 2010 or something. And then I became completely moon obsessed. And then
Mm.
I got into astrology, and it started with lunar astrology. And then I got into solar astrology, and then the planets and their cycles. And now I'm fascinated by the 7-year cycle and the 30-year cycle. And then it just exploded into this love of cosmometry overall, when you start to put together things like sacred geometry and shamanism and all these diverse things. And I started to see these patterns everywhere. It just became like, oh, I get it. So the things keep happening in the 7s, but the systems are 8. It's like the 7 is the living, being, doing, and the 8 is the structure that holds it.
Yes. Yeah, that's how I see it too. And it just shows up everywhere. It truly does. It's amazing to hear that from you. I'm not a mathematician myself. I did okay in math, but I would never. I think I got as far as calculus 1, and I had never had trig in high school, and it just kind of was the end of my math journey, because beyond that. But I've always been so inspired by math, and being able to pick up an advanced calculus book or something and see that it doesn't have any English words in it anymore. It's just all translations between numbers. And I'm like, oh, I would love to just plug that into my brain as like a matrix style thing, and just know it. But that's so cool to have that deep of an understanding, and then see the numerology and the cycles of the planets and our solar system neighbors through that lens.
Well, and I just keep learning more and more and more. Like, I'm already so aware of the power of 7 as a number and it being a prime number. But literally just the other day, I had a whole brand new thing where the alpha constant, 1 over 137, which is a physics term, like 137 is the super magical number. Well, it turns out that it's pi raised to the 7th exponent, so pi to the 7,
Uh-huh.
over 7 pi.
Wow.
And pi is the circle, right? So it's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
circle becoming a spiral.
Oh my goodness, that's so cool. Wait, so
Isn't that cool?
what is the 137? Can you explain like
Okay,
a
so
little?
137, I believe it's called the alpha constant,
Okay.
and it's a term in physics that is like this super magical number that I can't begin to explain it, but you can Google it. There's podcasts and stuff out there. I originally heard about it from Mia Balick, who does a podcast, and she had a guest on named Robert Grant, I think. Anyway, I went down a rabbit hole and I started to learn about the power of this 137, but I'm certainly not an expert on it. But
Okay, okay.
it's a very significant magical number that even in the Hebrew language, Yahweh is 137.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's deep. That's wow. Okay,
It
another
goes
rabbit hole to
deep.
go down.
Mhm.
Yeah, incredible. Wow, and the fractionalization, yeah, the exponents there, that's incredible. Oh my
Well, and pi. I mean, that's our
pi.
circle,
Yeah,
pi.
yeah, there it is. The circle to the spiral. But yeah, right. Explained through this beautiful numerology. I know. Wow. So the Wheel of the Year was your first foray. What came next as far as the connecting the dots in all the sevens for you.
Well, I think then it was the 7-dimensional medicine wheel where we looked at the 7 directions, and then I went
Yeah.
through a really deep process of, oh, I guess the 7 chakras would have been the second, because that was even before the medicine wheel. Yeah, so the chakras for sure. And then the 7 days of the week and the 7 planets.
Yeah.
And then I wanted desperately to have this cohesive system. I think it began with back before I knew of the 7s. I was working with the 8s, but I reduced it to 4. And I did a lot of psychological study, you know, Myers-Briggs and Enneagram and just different systems. And I kept finding places where there'd be like a matrix that was usually 4 categories, or you could create 7 things, but it was by blending 2 of the 8 to make the 4 or whatever. And just in these different systems, I kept finding the commonalities in the synthesis. But what I really desired was a framework that I could use over and over and over again. And so there was a time in my life where I kept doing this 7-8, 7-8, 7-8 dance. And finally, once I figured out that the 8 is the overarching, the infinity, and the 7 is the thing, that kind of coalesced at the same time that there were these 7 days of the week and 7 planets, 7 main planets that we knew about prior to a certain point in history that we attributed to the planets that were named after gods that were named after the planets, that I realized, oh, this could become my own tending life maintenance system, so that I have assigned a cosmic tenet to each day of the week. And I have practices I do on certain days of the week, because I have this multi-passionate lifestyle where I'm interested in so many things, that for me to remain balanced and not be completely sucked down a rabbit hole to the detriment of maybe I don't eat for 3 days because I'm so busy doing this thing I love, or I didn't actually get my exercise like I thought I would, or because I was too busy writing something, that I have this system now where a well-balanced life is distributed across these 7 days. And so I have a much easier time with this scaffolding. So what I've created is a scaffolding based on the 7, and it was the 7 days of the week that inspired that, because I had already done so many systems around the seasons and around, like, I hate calendars. Like, they just don't work for me. In fact, I have this calendar I use that's from an artist on Etsy who does it by moon. So the first box in the calendar is the new moon. And so
I love that.
but I also do things by astrology, and then I also do things by, it's this season. And so it just never made sense to me how we tend to order and structure our lives to be a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 world. Years go by. Like, it just doesn't work for me. And so to have this, to among that, have something, I guess it's sort of my, like, buoys that hold me up in what feels like an ocean of oppression, honestly, of time oppression, of time shackling.
Totally. It is colonialism.
That I can be like,
time.
okay, it's Monday. To me, that's all about mystery and the oracle, and it's the opportunity to make it a priority to do divination practices and pull some cards and light a candle and maybe even record a mysterious podcast in the dark. But if it's Thursday, well, that's a day of expansion and expression, a day named for Jupiter. And so I wake up on a Thursday morning and I say, portals of expansion are opening today. Growth abounds. And it helps me set this scaffolding for my week.
I love that. I also use the planetary days, and I would love to hear more, like go into the details about what you actually do. Because the PDF that I have on my website as kind of a freebie for signing up for my mailing list is about the planetary days that I put together maybe sometime last year, when I was like, I really want to go deeper into this and learn about the why and how the Roman gods relate to the Nordic gods, and how, within English, it is amazing to just be able to get such a beautiful snippet of our history, kind of a combined history from the Romance languages and the Nordic languages. Wednesday is Woden's day, which is Odin, right? So like that's a similar archetype to Mercury, to like, Miércoles, Mercury. And so it was interesting for me to kind of look at the 7 days and the gods from different parts of the world and say, okay, that's where the origin of these 7 days. And 7 days isn't arbitrary either. It's when fourth of the lunar cycle, generally speaking. And so for me, that was fairly a recent recognition of like, well, why 7 days? Oh, wait, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's a quarter turn of the moon. And so speaking to your lunar calendar,
Well, and the
like,
funny thing is that occasionally you'll get a 6-day quarter turn of the moon. You will quite frequently get an 8-day quarter of the moon. And so Mother Nature herself is doing the 7-8, 7-8, 7-8.
totally.
And for any of you people who watch Friends, 7-8, 7-7-7.
Yes, oh my gosh. I love it.
I just have to share this as an aside because I'd gone down that rabbit hole recently with the Robert Grant stuff. There was this recognition of the Venus-Mars polarity, men and women, masculine, feminine. But in the ancient Egyptian culture, and I believe this is a Robert Grant thing that I'm talking about, the alpha and omega represent more the male and the female, and that the alpha, when the small letter A, when flipped on its side, so it's just a perspective shift, is also the omega. And so it's like we live in this world of this contrast and polarity when it's really the same thing, just from a different perspective, because if you flip it over, it is its opposite.
Mhm.
But where that all came into like a really cool thing was that the horns of the bull and the Taurus energy, when you take the masculine horns and combine it with the Venus feminine,
Mhm.
you get Mercury.
Yep.
You get the messenger Mercury.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that is where we can begin to balance the male and female polarities and gender and all contrast through expression,
Yeah.
through Mercury, through messaging, through communicating,
Ooh.
speaking our truth.
Yeah, that is it, right? That is totally it. Yeah, coming alive through our voices and even taking the Mercury retrogrades as periods where we can reflect on how it is that we are communicating and how we are being messengers between the gods and the humans. I love Hermes, the winged foot, this idea that it's like multiple places at once. And I mean, Mercury is my ruler, the ruler of Virgo, and so I very much and also the ruler of Gemini, my North Node sign. And so I just feel a very deep kinship with the mercurial, this non-binary, looking at things from all the different sides. I love that you bring that up, but with the horns of Venus. And that's a very Inanna image, actually, when you think about it.
Oh, yeah.
This
Oh, yeah,
ability
yeah.
to live underground in the underworld, be comfortable there, go through that experience, choose to go there, but then also come back again. And so it's not choosing, I'm going to be down there, I'm going to be up here. It's the cycles, it's the seasons, it's all of the things that you are weaving in. I feel like as a collective, with the rise of social media and that mercurial ability to share to tens of thousands of people, millions of people instantly about these like, aha, wow, oh my God moments, there's more Mercury. There's more Mercury happening, more weavings of opposites that are happening now than ever before. And I'm here for it.
Oh, I agree. I agree. And thank you for your nerdy detailed research. Because again, I mentioned it when we first started, and I mean it sincerely from my heart. Like, I cannot be tethered. I'm a Grand Trine in air. I'm a Libra, Sun, Aquarius rising, Gemini moon. I can only stay tethered to a spot for so long before this kite is ready to fly off in the next thing. So I need people like you in this world who can wrangle the details in such an effective, beautifully written, wonderfully shared kind of way. So I had to gush on you a little bit there.
Oh, thank you so much. And I feel the same way with you about that. I mean, that air trine, that air quality of just, I always love air people, just really bringing me up to the big picture. And it's beautiful the way that you really synthesize
Well,
so
and
many
that
different things.
spiral, that cycle holds it all, right? We really need it all. And so that's where, I have this dream, this vision, this heartfelt passion that as we become more aware of our human design, our astrology, our personality, our evolutionary paths, the fact that we're different for a reason, because we're all part of this fractal, because as a whole, we're part of a spiral too, that is consciousness itself expanding.
Yeah.
And so if we can finally realize that we are not here to compete or perform against, but to experience the entire spiral and lean into each other where you already have what I need, or I already have what inspires you, or we found a way in a direction, or someone's painted a picture that's appealing. Like if we can lean into each other in a spirit of true collaboration and we can all spiral forward together, that is going to be the evolution of humanity back into a matriarchal culture, but we'll spiral back to matriarchy, but we'll do it even more expandedly, even more expansively, because it will also include the divine feminine, and it will also include technology, and it will also include our own evolutionary expansion versus living in tribes. Because yes, as much as I remember when I was younger, I wanted to live in a Native American tribe. That's how I wanted to live my life. That's what made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've fought against how we live in this world.
Yeah.
But I also really appreciate hospitals. You know, I really appreciate my computer. And I'm not sure if we had stayed in living in tribal systems, if those things would have come to pass. I'm just not 100% sure. And so
Right.
again, it's like I am grieving what we have done to each other in our ancestry. And as we talked about, having gone through many, many cycles since those horrendous acts have taken place to get us to the progress of where we are today, I also see the gold. And further, I can spiral forward. That's part of my gift, is like I can recognize the spiral, but I can also, from this vantage point, I can see around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
I can
Mm-hmm.
see around the corner to a place where we collectively are expanding beyond this competitive, limiting, scarcity mentality into a place of holistic celebration of diversity in its truest sense.
Yes. Snaps for that one. I feel you so deeply. This is probably the thing that I think about more than anything. And I look at it through the lens of the ages, kind of the end of age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. And, you're an Aquarian being. So you understand that is the future. That is what we're coming up on, the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And there's so much nitpicking as far as like, well, when is that happening exactly? And what
Right
actually
now,
is it? But we are on this cusp of,
spiral, remember? Like
right?
spirals, when is it happening is such a ruler. It's such a, like, pick up a ruler and it's got those lines, we want those lines of progression. Spirals don't work that way.
Yeah.
You have to get all the way around the spiral before you recognize
Where you are. Totally. Right. Yeah. It's absolutely, yeah. The curvature of the earth, the curvature is something that allows perception to wobble a little bit between those 6, 7, 8s and,
So we're
all
in it.
around. Right.
We're in it,
Yeah.
and it is happening.
Yeah. I mean, something that for me, I've never been I've always been the kind of skeptic, cynic, or just somebody who has to research down into the deepest parts of the earth in order to figure out a little bit of proof for something. And it's so funny because human design, the system of the precession of the equinoxes that's happening for me was one of those things that as soon as I read about it and was like, saw that the way that they were chunking out, or the way that it, like, this 2027 shift that's happening in human design, which is this shift from one cross to another cross, or from the vernal equinox point being in a tribal gate 37, the gate of the family, the gate of friendship, community, and it's moving into, in 2027, according to the mathematics that they've done in breaking down the precession, it's moving into 55, which is an individual gate, and this gate of spirit and abundance and this selfish individualness or self-fullness. And they're both Pisces gates, right? Like the 37 and the 55 are both in Pisces, but we're moving from one to another, thinking about and leaning into that transition at like a background frequency kind of level of this massive, the wobble of the earth on its axis over 25,000 years or so, right? It's like subtle shifts, but that affect everything. And when you look back through the different gates of the background frequency that last about 400 years each, for me, it's been a fascinating research project to see how each one of those energies is showing up. And to know that for all of our lifetime and our recent ancestors' lifetime, we've been in this energy of family, friends, community, and collective bargaining, where we're really, part of that tribe, the tribalism of nationalism, the tribalism of belonging to a certain entity is coming to an end. And that's what the 2027 prophecy is kind of all about, is this like, okay, well, let's look at the shadows. Let's see what's wrong with tribalism. There's beautiful parts of being in a tribe, of course. There's this collective unity, there's a sense of belonging, but then there's also this other part that is you have to give away your individuality in order to be supported. It's like an insurance plan. You're kind of like, if I pay for this, then I will be protected by the larger umbrella of the institution. And the larger the institutions have grown over time, especially the past 400 years of the Industrial Revolution and just everything that's happened within that time frame. And you see, okay, it's reached its tipping point. It's reached this critical threshold where it's time to now move to this point of just what you were saying, which is that returning to our own diversity, returning to our own weirdness, saying, I'm not like you, you're not like me. That's completely okay. Be more like yourself. I'll be more like myself. And then we can really attract and gravitate into a web-like structure that is more matriarchal. Like the womb, the matrix is more of a web than a pyramid, right? And so there is this changing of the guard happening right now, and that's one system that I've found resonance in looking through. But I think when you look at larger cycles, global cycles throughout lots of different cultures, there's a lot there from lots of different angles, again, about what's happening right now, as we're all so lucky to be alive at this moment in time.
Absolutely. I love how you just pulled that all together, because that is exactly it's us being in our individuality that will be the permission slip we need as more and more of us step into our true individuality and celebrate, oh, look at how much we have in common, and look at how different we are, and look at how powerful that makes us as co-creators, because we're bringing different things to the project. The more that we do that, it's a permission slip for everyone to do that. And then pretty soon it's an eco diversity among the humans, which is a beautiful thing. So I really love that you pulled that together. And then the other part, the wobble and the expansion and the expression, the fact that these things move, the progression of the equinoxes, is another example of how it's Mother Nature doing 7-8, 7-8. It's this sort of surface tension thing happening with the expansion. And then, oh, we have to go a little bigger, so we have to move into that next set of 5 to 6 degrees in the zodiac. We have to expand beyond what we defined ourselves as. We defined ourselves as these 5 to 6 degrees of Pisces, but now we don't fit that anymore. We got to go a little bigger. Like it's Mother Nature and the cosmos. It's the cosmos itself. I mean, we are spinning on a planet that's going around the sun, but it's not going around the sun in a circle.
Yeah.
It's going around the sun in a spiral, because the whole deal is like moving through space.
Yes. I love those animations so much. It's just like, you think that the solar system works like this, but really it's like, it adds in the techno beat, and it's like, okay, here we go. We're actually really soaring, and it's incredible. Yeah. It truly is. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's lovely to know you during these times. And, for as many horrors as there are out in the world, sometimes I'm just like, I used to want to time travel and live in a different time. Like, oh, it'd be cool to live back then or live back then. But like, when I really stop and think about it, being alive and in a creative potential of adulthood at this time, when so much is converging and so much is shifting, for me, I feel like it's like, when you pour water into a vessel, into a cup or something, it like fills to the brim. And then there's that like surface tension before it spills over, where it's kind of like holding on. It's like a little marshmallow of water where it's just like holding together. I feel like that's where we're at right now. It's just like,
I feel that too. I feel that too. In fact, I feel so energized and such a rush of positivity that I literally haven't felt at this level of freedom to feel it since years ago, because I think as with most of us, had such cognitive dissonance about what my world is, my bubble living, compared to consensus reality, and it disorienting and confusing, and we're all a little bewildered and befuddled over it all. But because we are reaching this sort of like bubbling up point, this surface tension kind of point, where we're reaching a point of no return, that while from one point of view is lots of awfulizing going on, lots of real suffering happening, not to deny any of that. All of that is true. And we are passing a point of no return in our human evolution, where we will be acting upon what we have created collectively. And I'm an eternal optimist. So I really believe that action that we will be taking will be evolutionarily positive, and that once we cycle back around again, we're going to look at any of the grieving that we've done the last couple of decades and feel like, oh, there was gold in that too.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry for the people who suffered through the gold making for the collective. And I have gratitude to them for the human experience that they are having while humanity as a whole is truly collectively needing to evolve.
Yeah. I mean, that brings up so much about just, I think with everything that's been going on over the past couple of years or decade or so, it really has just felt like the dust is being shaken off from the picnic cloth, and it's dust that was already there. There was already so much, and the grief that a lot of people are experiencing in mass right now, oftentimes people who have been suffering the longest are like, wait, what's new? Like there's nothing new. This has been happening, and it's better that there's more awareness to it. But then there's that disconnect, that kind of cognitive dissonance between like, oh, somebody is just discovering this because they've been a little bit padded and sheltered from it, right? And then people who, again, who have experienced things for centuries who are like, wait, no, this is not, you were blind before and now you can see, but don't bring that to me to explain to you, right? It's like, don't bring that over here and be like, tell me about this. It's like everybody has to go through their own process of revelation and awakening and seeing the horrors that coexist amongst the beauties of life. But there is something, like you said, that needs to change and that has needed to change for far beyond the Trump administration. There's been certain human tendencies of scarcity and victimization that have been a part of us for so long. I mean, victimization is the shadow of Gate 55, where the gift is abundance. And so it's really about working with those as polarities and kind of two sides to the same coin. It's really just about perception. It's how we see ourselves as these electromagnetic beings that are bodies of water that are affected by the tides. And it is that matter of perception that we are awakening to right now. And there's so much potential in that, you know?
There
And
really is. There's so much potential in that. And the fact that as we have expanded awareness, our perception points also grow and expand to where we have more sovereignty over where we choose to focus our attention. And we can have more sovereignty over how we respond to what we are perceiving. And that is where our power lies. And so to be disheartened by suffering that we see can also be a reminder to lean into the sovereignty we have to choose whether or not we too will suffer in this moment, or whether or not we will take this moment to send love to the person we perceive suffering, and or to stop seeing the person we see suffering as a victim and send them our belief in their capability and their own sovereignty to find a way through it, to ask for help, to use their resources, to grow and learn through the process. Yeah, I don't know. I start to fail to lose words
Mhm.
because when you start to think of really, really horrific acts in the world and places where people are truly victimized, my perspective kind of starts to fall apart a little bit. But in my medicine wheel, we learned something about it's called the triangle of disempowerment, and that we play these roles in life where we're either a victim, a bully, or a rescuer. And so
Mhm.
when I see someone suffering, then I'm playing the role of the rescuer. And so if I'm trying to help them or rescue them, it's not that's a bad thing, but it's that it puts me into a role and that role defines their role.
Yeah.
And that's me dismissing their own sovereignty. So it's just a place to be a little thoughtful about your perceptions. That's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, I absolutely feel that triangle is really fascinating framework because it's true. Like I think so many of us is just like I just have to save the world and then it'll be okay. But I think it's like who's deciding who needs to be saved, and it really is. I think this moment of egalitarianism in a way that is allowing for sovereignty across borders and across different types of people. And that's my favorite thing about being alive on this planet right now is being able to witness such a diversity of humans, of perspectives, just all the time. Whereas before, just we didn't have access to that. And so stereotypes were more readily able to be made. And, that decision that, oh man, I might have to go save somebody because look at them. I saw them on TV, this ad of like a starving child somewhere. And it's like, that was this top-down marketing in a certain way, even though it was trying to be helpful. But it was tied in with the industrial complex in its own way. And now it's like the proliferation of people having platforms where they can share their sovereign voices and their opinions and their art and their beauty is just like, please, please don't take that away. That's the biggest threshold, I think, is that we have lived for the past decade or two in this free world of people being able to put out whatever they want. And I do feel like there's more controlling of that, but that to me, that feels like a last hurrah, like trying to contain the water that's inevitably going to overflow. It's just like, oh, let's put a cap on that and keep it in. But operating mechanisms just don't work in the same way. Once it's a web, right? It's not the top down kind of infrastructure. So I have hope. I have hope and trust in this continued sovereign expansion of each person. And that's what I lean into any day that I'm feeling sad or that I'm feeling overwhelmed or apathetic or whatever it is, where it's just like, oh my God, I just read this article and the world is just hell in a handbasket. But then I just return to that moment of being like, no, I believe deeply in my being. I think it's like tapping into these larger cycles that are saying, yeah, we're ready for this, the paradigm shift, if you want to call it that, but it's on its way. And it's here.
Take me back to Inanna for a moment from the lens and perspective of exactly what you're saying about how this belief, this hope isn't, it could be labeled spiritual bypassing, but the reason that it's not is because it is an essence of something after things have been shed. And I know that when you're going through those 7 gates, you're shedding something at each gate, right?
Right.
And so to come to the end of that process and land in a place of sovereignty. So hope born of sovereignty versus hope from wishful thinking of spiritual bypass. Like,
yeah.
There's something here. Do you care to comment? I'll leave it at that.
Thank you for that. That's a really good point. I've talked to a friend of mine recently who is just like, the problem with men, we don't need to all get too into gender, but it was really just like this unwillingness to die, this unwillingness to shed, like female body people shed something physically all the time.
We do.
There's blood, there's a constant shedding, right? And I think that because of the cultures, like the patriarchal cultures, overemphasis on, the up and to the right, achievement oriented, productivity oriented, great chain of being, myth of progress, all of this kind of stuff. There's this underlying belief within a lot of male bodied people, I would say, that if you let yourself die a little bit, you will fully die and will never regenerate. There's no ability to come back. I've experienced this with people, ex-partners, friends, people who are just like, well, if I crack a little bit, if I show any sort of weakness, then the whole thing will crumble. And I think that people are coming more and more into this framework of like, no, the dead part of the year is nourishing, right? Like the soil, if it was constantly producing fruits and flowers and they didn't have a time to lay fallow, it didn't have a time to go back to invest in the root system and the soil building process of the dark time of year, like the wheel of the year says, then there would be no soil for something new to grow. So it's like you have to shed, and it's not a one-time thing. It's not like I have to go down into the depths of the underworld once and then I'm going to be good after that and stay above ground. It's a recognition that like the first time you shed, the first time you die, the first time you're hung on a hook, it's going to be really hard, right? But then once you've done it a couple of times, once you realize that that is a part of the whole thing, it gets maybe not easier in the moment, but there's a lot more ability to recognize the spiral for what it is, for the fact that like this is a piece of it. And even when you're in that moment of darkness, recognize that there is a gift there, but it requires maybe a few cycles of that. It requires a few times of not fighting that. And I think that that's the thing that's really needing to crack right now within the overculture in the society, is just this resistance to times of slowness, times of death, times of darkness. And so those practices that you're building in, like the 7 days of the week, the practices that you're weaving together to be able to navigate that without a fear of never coming back. It's almost just like, what's the fairy tale? Hansel and
Like
Gretel.
breadcrumbs, Hansel and Gretel. Yep.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah. So it's kind of like that. I think that once you know that you're on a journey and a descent and a reascent kind of pathway, that putting those breadcrumbs, setting up a little bit of a container for yourself to say, oh, I can find some bearing within this process. I think for me, that's what I'm trying to do. And with your work, I see that that's what you're doing as well, is just being like, here's something you can recognize when you're going through something that might feel like a point of no return, because you will see this again. There's a little flicker of light, right?
Absolutely. Thank you for putting that into words. That's something I can do a little more clarification of when I'm speaking with people about the processes that we're learning together. When I'm working with clients, to be able to convey that what I've been calling a scaffolding or a structure, which I'm not thrilled with. I'll come up with better terms. Maybe you will for me because you're so good at that. But that it's this becoming familiar with the process of the cycle to build a bit of more confidence and faith in the fact that you won't just spiral off, that there will be this return. So faith in the return.
Yeah. Yeah. Faith in the return.
And you nailed it with the masculine fears. And I'm gonna have to go back after we chat and look into back in my psychology days. There is a sort of an inherent wound that supposedly men come in with and that women come in with, and this was psychology studies of up through 2000, so who knows how much we've evolved since then. But as soon as you said it, I felt like, oh my gosh, yes, that's the masculine wound. And I think we're going to need to have a great big masculine healing for the masculine in all of us.
Yeah.
Because it's been through a lot. It's been through some things.
Yeah.
And in the same ways that feminism, matriarchy has been through some things, it came with some resources to deal with the things it's been through. And I think that some of this toxic masculinity wound that we're all working through, and even just as simple as ego-driven Mars, Aries, I am energy, we're going to need this massive collective sort of safe space for some of that to be healed and processed so that we can show that spiral of return is for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
No one's getting left behind. No one's being shamed.
Yeah. No, not at all. And that's what keeps us in these binaries that don't really exist, right? It's our perceptive
Exactly.
binaries. I really do see the next age, the age of Aquarius, and this next era that we're coming into as an age of synarchy more than matriarchy or patriarchy. I really do feel like we have experienced an age of matriarchy that was about fertility worship, and it became like an accumulation of resources, so much so that like the early patriarchs were like, oh, we have to sneak in. There's no way we could possibly overcome this massive fortresses that own all the resources and all the water. So we have to it's like King David sneaking in through that literal waterways in order to take Jerusalem. And there's a lot of references in history of like coming in, and then the patriarchy has exploded and is reaching the end of this era. And it's, as much as I, down with the patriarchy I am right now, I do feel like it's not about a return to matriarchy. I see that word everywhere and I love it because I'm a mother. I love that notion. But I think that there is an actual union that is needing to happen. And it's inevitable. I mean, for me, healing the patriarchal wound within my own self of having to prove, having to have everything make sense, be linear, be scientific, not allow for the darkness in ever, kind of don't be emotional, grin and bear it kind of attitude that was very pervasive in most of my life. So I'm definitely not exempt to that, right? And I don't think it's a gendered thing per se, but it's the more of like that archetypical matriarchy patriarchy battle that we're hitting up against the metal of that right now in a big way.
Well, and we're moving from this, our whole perspective is about contrast, this or that, black and white, yin yang. And again, come back to the spiral. The spiral goes to either side. The pendulum swings, but when it's a spiral, it just keeps going around and around and around. So it's balanced. Like you can still have all those different perspectives, but they don't represent the whole truths. They're a perspective. And if we can begin to talk in spirals, we can begin to say things like, from over here in the spiral, I see this. What do you see over there? Because together we're going to have a bigger picture. And this is how we can build a system of synarchy versus, like you said, matriarchy or patriarchy. And someone had explained to me, because they're using the word matriarchy so much, that they don't mean run by women, they mean run by circles. And I'm like, well, then let's just use a word that means circle.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, no, let's just use spiral.
Spiral. Yeah, totally, totally. I love it. The spirals. It's so beautiful. Tell me about you mentioned your client work that you do. I'm curious about the scaffolding, the frameworks like Moonfeather Hollow. It's such a beautiful site, and I've taken some time to explore, but I'd love to hear from you what it is that you're excited about right now that you're working on, or how you're interacting with people, how you're shining your unique shine into the world.
Well, I can't limit myself to any one thing, and that is to my great joy in life and also my detriment, because it becomes a lot to try to explain, like in a simple interview or a podcast. So I'll try to be clear.
What's rising to the top?
But my universe is kind of world building. So I have this imaginal sanctuary, creative sanctuary called Moonfeather Hollow that's actually quite literally named after real places. My business partner lives on the East Coast in a place called Moon Hollow, and I live here in what is quite literally the Valley of the Moon, when you interpret the Snoqualmie tribe's definition of what they've named this native land. And so we both love all things in nature and fairy, and we joke and say that the fairies brought us together. And so we have this sort of whimsical imaginal space in our minds, and that we've fleshed out in imagery and story in an online setting. So it's a virtual reality too, but we've created in such a way that our clientele can take it with them and escape to Moonfeather Hollow in their minds as an imaginal place where we can go into the enchanted wilds and be who we really are and be free and forget our humanness when it is a limit. See, names and labels are great until they limit you. And when we start to limit ourselves by this idea of being human, and we can instead go back to a ancestral memory or a collective unconscious memory of being a fairy with wings who can be in the woods, or a gnome, or just a mythical creature of expansive childhood nostalgia, we tap into that sense of inner wisdom, play, joy, creativity, all things that are like Leo sun energy, fifth house, and that is what lights me up, because that's creativity. I'm all about creativity and imagination. So we have a series of what we call our Spark Collection email courses to help people get in touch with that, their inner playful selves. But that is sometimes just a gateway when people are ready to do the deep transformational work, or they want to go deeper into, okay, now I've opened up to remembering who I am as a natural, soft, being on this earth where I belong just as much as the trees and the stars, to quote Mary Oliver. Once I get in touch with that part of me, and I still feel like I don't understand why I'm here and what do I do, then I lean into the astrology and the human design. And then when they say, okay, I know what I want to do, but I'm stuck because here's this place where I have this wound or this block or this, then I lean into my alchemy, my shamanism, my healing practices, my coaching. And then when a person is ready to deeply explore the biggest transformations of livelihood and business as a spiritual journey and collaborative projects, that's, I think, who I'm trying to find. And that's what I am most excited about all of this leading to. Because when people ask what I do, I feel like I want to say, I'm on my way, but I'm not quite doing it yet because the world's not quite ready for it.
Yeah.
So I'm doing the legwork for this really amazing thing that we will all be doing parts of very soon, within a few years.
I love that. so many ways in. I love that you make it easy to embrace it through play, through nature connection, through the mythical worlds. I was just up in the forest on Father's Day in here in Santa Fe, and my daughter and I were having this very long conversation about the sizes of different mythical creatures. She was like, "Oh, a fairy is this big and it rides on that moth, and the pixie is this big and it can ride on a bumblebee." And everybody had their own, whatever the size that they could ride on, and a gnome and an elf. And it was really just such a fun conversation to sit under this tree in this little aspen grove and think about, really visualize all of these. And you're right, that is what takes you there outside of the limitations of your humanity. So that's such a beautiful entry point. And I agree with you that the time is coming. People are craving this type of work, of leaning into their own magic. And it is such a magical realm that you've created with your partner. It's just so alive and so colorful. And there's so many places to explore, and it's not trying to just like get you to click a button and do a specific thing. I really like that, the multi-passionate and multi-ways in, because everybody is coming in from a different level where it's like, what do you want to do with this? But there's this whole magician's toolbox that you can pull from depending on who you're working with.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I can't believe I forgot to mention one of the most structured tools we have, because as you can tell just from talking to me, that I spiral a lot. And so sometimes getting things into a digestible structure is a bit of a challenge. But thankfully for the moon and repeating cycles and systems, we do have an actual very structured experience called the lunar labyrinth, where we walk through the lunar cycles throughout the year. And we have a guided lunar journal that we call the Dreamoir of Moonlit Alchemy, where we lead people through a practice of like opening the doorway to some of these deeper reflections and processes where we're spiraling through the year, because you're following a similar process. And it's beyond journaling. We call it journal crafting, because there's also a full collage page in there. And so it's more that expression. And then there's a oracle reading for each lunar cycle specific to that. And then an online space where people can share. For some people, that's plenty, because they have a full life and they're working a full-time job and they have children and they have interests and they have hobbies. And so for them to have this touch point, which is this connecting with the moon, that's where sort of where we began. But I need more for me. And therefore I need to attract people who also want more, so that I can do more things. So I still do those things, and those things are true to my heart, but I need to create. I've already created that. You know what I mean? Like there's this drive, and I don't know how much of that is my inner masculine, but it's also just that Jupiter expansion energy of the spiral that I won't ever stay in the same place for very long.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep spiraling forward. In fact, that's one of the things we say in our lunar labyrinth is that we're never falling behind. There's no behind. There's no catching up. We just keep spiraling forward with the moon.
Beautiful. So is the lunar labyrinth, is it live sessions where you're meeting up with people, or is it a
No,
it's a self-contained?
One of the beautiful things about the way we're doing our virtual and online and imaginal reality, Moonfeather Hollow, is that it's accessible any time of day. We do a lot of voice notes. There's articles, there's places you can comment. We have the capacity to do a social media feed, which we did the first 3 years we were in business. But the last couple of years, we're like, no, we don't want people to just scroll. We want them to come out, read an article, comment. And then over the last year, the platform I use started to have voice chat available. And we love voice chat. And so I'm trying to be more intentional now about creating containers to help people see the beauty of being able to leave a voice chat someplace. If you wake up at 3:00 in the morning and there's nobody to talk to, and I don't want to type something, but if I'm feeling like I can talk, I can leave a message out there in the ether. And then there's this magical thing that happens where time passes, experience passes, someone else listens to that message, responds to it, has a perspective shift, and then you go back to it, and it's more of a relationship than like a live Zoom call where you're like on the spot and you feel like you have to respond right away. And there's this performative energy. And so I'm right now, I'm devising more exercises and ways to help people free their voice, untether their voice, because that's turning out to be a very powerful, and it reminds me of the Mercury stuff we were talking about,
Yeah.
that this expression of our truth in a sovereign way where we're less concerned about how we're being perceived and seen, I think is helpful in a voice-only environment.
Totally. I love asynchronous voice stuff so much. And I think people are getting a little bit burnt out with having to be in one place at one time and figuring out the mechanism to connect and be in community but not have to be under the same roof, even a digital roof, and come from where you are. I love that. That's so cool that you're really working with that. It's reminding me of just how powerful that is to feel heard, to be able to use your voice, but not have to be in that pressurized kind of container. So that's really cool.
Yeah, giving ourselves space and time without being tied to a specific timeline or a schedule or a time shackle.
It is very Mercury, very Hermes. You're right. You're right. Well, wow, it's been so fun to talk to you. I feel like I could talk to you for hours and hours. It's been a pleasure to dive into these things. And we didn't even touch the surface of the spiral of sevens. And yeah, I'd love, maybe you could speak to that just really quickly. Tell me about that larger, because it's 7 groupings of 7.
It
And
is. It's
since
7
we were
groupings of
on,
7. Since I
yeah.
just couldn't help myself. So there's cycles of time and transformation. And that includes things like we talked about, like the days of the week, the alchemical stages, plant life cycle. We didn't talk about that either. Color, light, and sound is a second category. And of course, the 7 colors of the rainbow, the 7 chakras, mystery, myth, and the unseen. So there's 7 theosophical planes of existence. Isn't that cool? The 7 archangels, 7 heavens, etc. So there's 7 of those. There's 7 inner myth and moral mirrors. So like the deadly sins, the virtues, the mythic labors. Sacred structure and symbolic systems is another category. And it was because I had to. I couldn't help myself. I had to see, okay, can I make 7 categories? And it includes things like the 7 platonic solids, the 7 classical planets, the 7 major arcana tiers. So the 22, if you take out the Fool, then there's 21, and then there's these 3 groupings of 7. Sacred geometry and living worlds, there's 7 continents, 7 seas, 7 directions. And the 7th category is our favorite, Alison, the meta mapping and dream weaving.
Ooh, I love it.
And in there is where I have what I was alluding to earlier, this idea of a structure that I can live through with the days of the week. I call it a braid. It's the cosmic tenet, the planet, and the day. So like I said, today being Thursday, its tenet is expansion, and the day of obvious is Thursday, named for Jupiter, which is the planet. And so when I look at Jupiter in my chart and look at what it means, that helps guide what I'm doing today. I might check in what Jupiter's doing as a transit, and that might help guide what I do today. But for sure, I am checking in with all things in my life that are areas of growth and expansion, study, learning, all things Sagittarius. And where's my arrow going?
Yes, big picture. Thor's day is Thor is the Jupiter.
Thor's day, yeah.
Yeah. So that was one of those connections that I was trying to make earlier. But yeah, Thor's day. And I mean, throw in the hammer, throw in the shooting the arrow, just looking at the big scope. I agree. I mean, it's so fun. I do, yeah, meditations on Monday and a lot more like working out active stuff on Mars Day on Tuesday and communications on Wednesday. But I love that we're having this conversation on Jupiter's Day because it does feel very expansive. And I feel like that's where we're
I feel like,
intersecting.
I really do feel like if I had to pick a day that represents the spiral the most, it would be Thursday. It would be
Yeah.
this Jupiter spiral. It would be because it's expansion.
Yeah, yeah. That's so cool. And I love that you mentioned that you can tap into your natal Jupiter as well, or the transiting Jupiter to give a little bit of flavor on like how that's showing up. That's something that I literally hadn't really thought about doing until very recently. I was like, oh, of course, yes, you can just trace the days of the week based on the planets and their energies. But I love seeing that like, oh, Jupiter for me is in the 5th house. So it's a great day to expand on creative projects or on nurturing whatever type of brain children are coming into the world, the 5th house kind of stuff.
Well, and I walk through my human design and my gene keys too. And so,
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
looking at my, if anybody's familiar with gene keys, I'm looking at my pearl. I'm looking at my areas of purpose and progress
Yeah.
and my essence of what am I here to do in this world kind of thing.
Right.
Like
Right. Yeah. What gate is your Jupiter in?
34.
Mine too. Are you serious? Wow.
Yep.
Power up.
Yep.
No wonder.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. That's so funny. And so really fascinating to pay attention to that, we're in this Jupiter day having this Jupiter conversation.
And that's where I'm saying, like, you can ask me what I do, and I can give you all these different titles that have meaning. And I help people. I sincerely do. But the way that I do that is up to them. And it's based on what they need, because my experience is a 49, which anybody who's familiar with that, it's the well of depth. And so I'm a synthesizer. I this is what I do. And so I help in the ways that they need, because I can resource, and I might not know the details because I'm no Virgo, but I can wayfind for them. I can help them find a direction. I can be that threshold navigator in ways that are hard to explain until you do them. And then people are like, wow, oh my gosh, thank you so much.
Yeah, the doing. It's in the doing. I feel that with you. There's so much energy and charisma and power, and that gate 34, gate of power, I see it as a horse, the centaur archer Sagittarius horse just kind of running to the horizon, just like really embodying the power that's not power over, but it's this like finding the power within, that's this limitless well of resources. Yeah, so people would be lucky to work with you in whatever capacity that they find you, because the power is there and the guidance and that depth of vision. So how can people find you? You have your beautiful Substack and your website, moonfeatherhollow.com.
I've got a YouTube channel.
Okay.
And I've pretty much, sorry, Instagram's just a yard sign now. That's all I have. That's all I have capacity for.
Yeah, it's a lot in there.
Well, it's mostly just, the mega corporations and the whole social media vibe. I can't do it anymore. But it makes a great yard sign, and I get that people are there, and that people who are there get something out of it, and good for them. And I just can't anymore.
You have to choose your channels. Yeah.
I mean, I really do.
Yeah,
Yep. So YouTube, and I tried Blue Sky for a while. I'm there as well, but again, not as active. Again, we have to choose our channels. And what I've learned too, also over the last 5 years or so, is that when you really resonate with what somebody's doing, you'll go to where they're posting. So we don't really need to be everywhere, other than to have like a yard sign to say, here, find me over here.
Mhm.
So really, YouTube is where I've been, and my own website and my own Moonfeather Hollow online site. But I am just now starting to find a home in Substack. And it took me a long time to come around to Substack, only because I really thought it was just for writers.
Mhm.
And for whatever reason, I never really identified as a writer in the way that writers identify themselves as
Right.
writers. And so I didn't feel a home there, but
Mhm.
it's evolved. And so now I feel a home there, and I'm ready to grow it.
Cool.
It's a cool place.
It is. It has changed a lot, though. It's gone from more literary type of, OnlyFans for intellectuals to like more and more people are fleeing the other social networks, I feel. And that's one that is acting like a social network in a way.
And it's another one of those
are.
where maybe where I belong doesn't exist yet. And I'm not the only one, because I'm finding more and more of us on Substack, where what we really value is the exchange of ideas as a thinking with versus a thinking at or thinking for. And I don't want an audience so much as I want a cohort of evolutionaries.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to just put out your beautiful light, and then other people with similar frequencies will attract to each other. It's like moths to different flames, I feel like, and we're in that path. And I'm so glad that your moth has found its way to my flame and vice versa. It's such a joy to connect with you. So much there. And you really re-inspired me to get back into the 7 days of the week. And I'd love to check out your lunar teachings. That sounds really like a beautiful thing to attune to as well. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It has been.
All right. So that wraps up the conversation with Stephanie Foley. Thank you so much for being here. And again, check out her work at moonfeatherhollow.com and on her Substack at stephaniefoley.substack.com. Lots of beautiful writing, so much synchronicity, so much synergy there between our work. So if you follow me, Stephanie is another person to definitely follow as well. And if you'd be so kind as to leaving a review wherever you're listening to this as a podcast, or if you're on Substack, a comment. It's really lovely to hear how these conversations are landing for you as the Magicians series continues. So many magical people in the world, and I've felt so blessed to talk to them, including Stephanie here today. If you'd like to be featured as a magician on Living the Spiral Magicians, you can DM me or send me an email at alison@hearthandspiral.com. I'd love to continue these conversations about how you're bringing your magic into the world. So I look forward to hearing from you, and have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day.